All right, welcome back to our continuing coverage of Arizona women's basketball. The Wildcats playing for the national championship on Sunday against the Stanford Cardinal. I'm pleased to be joined by the voice of the Arizona women's basketball team, Derrick Palmer. And Derrick, we've known each other, I think, for about 12 years now. You've been doing this ever since I got here in 2008. There were a lot of lean years. And I remember having a conversation with somebody around the time that they were going through the 6-24 season 4 years ago. And I said to him, wouldn't it be nice if at some point we had a team that was on par with the UConn? How long do you think that would take? Well, we got our answer last night, and I didn't think it would be in 2021. That's for sure.
No, it's really quite shocking how quickly this turnaround has become. And I think that one thing that we're kind of losing track of is that these guys had the opportunity to do this a year ago. They were on pace to host the first weekend. And, that surely was going to result in the Sweet 16 with the way that they were playing toward the end of it. So it's kind of got this feel, especially as we're talking about how this is the first time somebody missed the tournament for more than 10 years and then went to the Final Four. But it's really easy to forget that this was a good team last year, too.
Tell me, let's first I want to talk a little bit about you and how far do you go back? What was your first season?
2007-08. It was Bonvicini's last year.
Last season. Okay, so you've worked now with three different coaches. What are some of the differences that you've seen in those three different regimes? One that was, legendary, but at the end, and then, the Nia Butts situation, which never really got off the ground at all, to now what you've seen with Adia Barnes and where she's been able to take this program to one win away from a national championship.
I think the biggest thing anymore is that you really want to have somebody who is really, really relatable. And I think that that's what Coach Barnes is. And the thing that's separating her from where Coach Butts was is that she was really, really fiery and maybe not necessarily what a lot of West Coast kids are looking to try to relate to. And you very rarely hear Coach Barnes raise her voice. This is something that I think is kind of sets her apart. She's able to make her point while still making all of the young people feel like they're not being alienated. And I think one of the big ways that you recognize the difference between these two is the way that Adia is recruiting. I mean, the talent that she's bringing in is something that this program hasn't been able to see as far as it's trying to compete with UConn. So that I think would be the big one. This is a new era where young people don't necessarily want to be browbeaten an awful lot. And the coaches got to figure out how are they going to try to get their point across without going old school. And Barnes has certainly shown that she can do that.
And when you look at this run here, I mean, I kind of compared it last Friday night to a lot like that men's run in 1997. In fact, in such that they didn't finish the season very well, but they seem to have found that spark in that 2-week session that they had where they were just practicing in between the end of the Pac-12 tournament and the beginning of the NCAA tournament, and they've been able to turn it on. What have you seen that have been the key differences? Obviously, Aari McDonald has raised her game to a new level. And I thought that was something that had to happen. I mean, and not so much for me. It wasn't so much that I felt like she needed to score more than she was scoring. I just thought she needed to make more shots because she wasn't necessarily shooting the ball at the percentage that I thought she should shoot it during the regular season.
Off the air, Coach Barnes and I had a conversation where I mused that the biggest difference between a 20-point game for Aari and a 30-point game are knocking down jumpers. And I think that that's really what she showed in the regional against Texas A&M in Indiana. Like, she was getting shots that she frequently has. She's just knocking them down now. And I think a lot of the reason for that, though, is because her teammates have started doing the same thing. And I wish I was a tactician and I could try to really illustrate what's been going on. The biggest difference, though, just from my viewing has been, if you go back to even that first 35 minutes against BYU, there's a lot of stationary offense. It's really hard to try to knock down a rhythm jumper when you've been standing there for 20 seconds. And they're not doing that. It looks like they're running a system. You got a lot of inside and out action. And I think one of the reasons for that is because all of a sudden teams are having to be respectful of what's going on at the perimeter. And once you give Aari a little crease, she doesn't need much space. She's going to get there. She's so fast.
And I think that, and some people scoffed when I tweeted this the other day, but I think she's doing some things that she didn't do during the regular season. I've seen a few moves that I don't recall seeing, some of the dribbling, the crispy dribbling to create opportunities for herself. It's almost like she had some things in her bag that she wasn't going to let people see during the regular season, that now that we're on this stage, she said, okay, now I'm bringing out everything I've got in my arsenal to let people know who I am.
And I think the reason for that is there's just so much congestion in the painted area that it didn't matter, if she could go full on Harlem Globetrotter, she wasn't going to have any space to try to do it. But now that they've loosened that up, now she's able to do all sorts of stuff. I mean, the biggest move that I haven't seen a lot of has been this step back jumper. She's all of a sudden going James Harden here with this thing. They're big, deep steps back to try to get some space. But now everybody else is loosened up. You got to be respectful of what she can do off the dribble. So they're already giving her a lot of space, and she's winding up being wide open after she takes one step in and then one big step out. And she's, again, knocking them down. So there's been a couple of things, but I think that anything that you're seeing advance as far as what Aries able to do individually is probably going to be a shout out to her teammates, because they're really helping her out by knocking down shots consistently.
And it's both, not only, when you say step back jumper, and going back to that game against UConn, she had the nice step back kind of in the lane where she posted up Paige Buchers, which, we don't, I said to myself, when's the last time you saw Aerie post up somebody in the lane? Mm-hmm. And then she had one in transition that was just a beautiful, she let the girl fly right by her in the first half to step back and nail a three. So she's not only doing it from distance, but she's also doing that from short range too. And again, that's another element of your game that you have to raise at this time of year to elevate a team. And we've always known that guard play is what drives these types of tournaments. And if you've got superior guard play, you can play deep into March.
So, and along those lines, especially talking about setting Aerie up so that she doesn't have to have the basketball a lot, Shayna Pellington, who's this year really struggled with her jump shot, both mid-range and from deep. And if she is able to get in and try to create, then she's going to be really effective. But it was hard for her to be that way because, again, just running into the same problem with all the people packing the paint. But now she had 3 assists yesterday. That kind of snuck by me. And a lot of that is because everybody's got to be mindful of what's happening on the perimeter. Now somebody as athletic and strong as Shayna is able to get in there and then set up somebody like Aerie who's able to post up because she's got such a deep bag of tricks. But and I think, and I feel like a broken record here, but it just keeps coming back to when the shots are falling, all of a sudden the offense becomes so much more diverse. That's kind of probably be the key coming up against Stanford, because the shots weren't falling the last time these teams were playing in Maples.
Arizona women's basketball play-by-play man Derrick Palmer is our guest. And Derrick, okay, so third time against Stanford, 30-point or 27-point loss first time, 14-point loss the last time. What do you believe it takes for the Wildcats to win on Sunday?
I said throughout the last game when they were rounding out the regular season and really, really having a hard time offensively. And you look back there, those struggles seemed like they started against California, when the Golden Bears, they choose to play defense and they can really D up just about anybody. And I think it kind of took away some of the Cats' mojo. And then they just transitioned into a really, really tough game at Stanford where they were held to 46 points. Started the ball game shooting really well, went 3 for 5 from 3-point range in the first quarter, but they just continued to pack it in and dared them to shoot more and more. And they just couldn't knock down the open jumpers. So if you're looking how things have changed, the offense, when those shots are falling, it just provides so many more opportunities, especially for Aerie. And she wound up having a pretty good game against Stanford. I think she had 24, but she was working really, really hard. Throughout that, even with the offensive struggles, they defended well enough to win that game. I mean, you hold Stanford to 62 on its own floor and you don't win, that's probably a little bit of a shocker there. So they had demonstrated that they could play this caliber of defense that the country is becoming familiar with, going all the way back to that disappointing loss at Maples. Now, just the question is, I don't know if many people are wondering whether or not they can keep Stanford around 60. They've been doing it to teams of that caliber. It's just, can they get the point total up around 60? And thus far, the answer seems to be, yeah, I think so.
And we're seeing, and you mentioned the defense, we're seeing a lot more trapping high up on the floor. I mean, really going out and getting those guards and trying to trap them above the circle.
No, and that's something that they generally try to do, especially when teams try to start something with a high screen. They'll just keep that post player out there and try to run that into the ground. And they've had an awful lot of success doing it. The thing that's really surprised me while watching it is they're really now aggressively moving these ball handlers to the sideline. So it's almost a triple team by the time they get done bullying them off away from the way the action was supposed to develop. And again, Kate Reese, who doesn't necessarily have the same sort of defensive reputation, but she's so long, so rangy, and she gets out there and starts swinging those arms around, and they're hard to get any sort of line of vision to try to complete a pass. So they've really kicked that up that way and moving people away from the middle of the floor. But that's I think just something that might have resulted from just getting into this sort of energy and just playing with it, because that has been pretty much the defensive script from throughout.
Take me through what your day is going to be like tomorrow.
On Easter.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
we're gonna get in a brunch. I'll be fortunate to be able to join the family with that, and then head down to McHale, where we've been working out of a studio, and just get everything set up with the Zoom on a computer to be able to watch something that's a little bit more real time, and then set the game up above that on a TV, so I have a quick access to a replay. Have the stat monitor next to that, so it's kind of a constant transition between three different monitors, and get some great audio. The NCAA has been sending us, and ESPN has been sending us really, really good audio that makes it sound as if we're definitely there. And just start watching the ball game. We'll start just under ordinary circumstances, 15 minutes before tip, and have our conversation with Coach Barnes, and then just get ready to let it rip.
What has that been like, calling games from a studio this entire season? Obviously, you were at home for games during the regular season at McHale Center, but just some of these road games and having to try to capture that emotion from two states away, or one state away, really, since Texas is next door.
It's the biggest challenge has been you cannot duplicate the energy. It's something that I was really starting to appreciate as the fans were really starting to come into McHale. But just in addition to that, as there was a growing audience that was live there needing to be entertained, the elements that the school was starting to introduce into the women's broadcast. And I mean, one of my favorite things, and especially now that we've been without it for a full season, was they would announce the starting lineup, and then they would start playing the introduction to Kanye West's Power, where they let him go. And then right before the instruments would kick in on the song, the band's drummer would hit it, and then the band would start playing along with Kanye. And it's just such a cool experience because everybody's getting hyped. That band has mastered that number. The teams are coming onto the floor, and I'm getting goosebumps just trying to describe it and doing a bad job of it. We don't have that right now, or we don't have as much of it when I would get to call the games in McHale. When I'm doing it by remote, there it's just me trying to manufacture as much of that energy as I can. So I still get dressed up just to try to make it seem as much like I'm going to work as possible, just to try to find any trick to get as juiced as I can. But the tournament has provided a lot of that energy, but otherwise I feel like I'm pacing around the living room like I'm getting ready to fight somebody just to try to get it up, let's do it,
The question that many a broadcaster in your situation has always been asked, and have you thought about that final call and what it will be if Arizona wins?
So I thought long and hard on Monday and was workshopping some things, maybe mostly for comedic benefit for myself. But then we finally got down to it, and it was almost like a reverent observance of what was happening. And anything that I had thought about saying just kind of completely went out the window, because it was then just being awestruck, like looking into the Holy Grail. The Wildcats are going to the Final Four. And it probably sounded a little bit like a letdown to everybody else who was ready to get geeked about it. But it was just so few teams get to have that opportunity, especially on the women's side. If you're not a number one or a number two seed, the numbers are stacked against you historically to try to play into this sort of circumstance. So at that point, it was just like, wow. But then yesterday, it was like, holy cow, this team is really coming for everybody. So that was just raw emotion. And if they reach that point again tomorrow, I'm imagining it's going to be the same sort of thing where I could probably write down 5 different things. And if the final buzzer sounds and the Cats are leading Stanford, you just throw them all up into the air and let that raw emotion rule.
Well, Derrick, have a great call on Sunday in the national championship game. It's what every announcer dreams about when they get into this business, to have an opportunity to do it, and win or lose, and hopefully win. We look forward to being able to get back with you if it's a win and talk about how that final call came together.
I would be happy to do it. And this has been such a God blessing and great run. I'm so blessed to be part of it.
Well, hey, anytime that you go through the entire gamut of the losing to get to the winning, it's definitely deserving to be in that seat to be able to call such an event as we're going to see on Sunday. Derrick, best of luck.
Hey, thanks so much.
All right, Derrick Palmer, he is the radio play-by-play voice of Arizona women's basketball. Stay with us as we have continuing coverage of the Wildcats in the Final Four through the championship game on Sunday.